Now we're excited to transition into our first set of keynote speakers. As we talked about earlier, the overarching theme of the collaborative is to drive social innovation. But as I'm sure most of you would agree, the term social innovation can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So in that vein, we wanted to kick off the collaborative with a set of speakers who are approaching innovation from three entirely different angles.
Our first guest is the Director of International Nutrition at Action Against Hunger, which is one of the world's leading organizations fighting against hunger. Last year alone, Action Against Hunger reached over 14 million people in 50 countries worldwide. He himself has worked in 16 countries in Africa and Asia, supporting UN agencies, NGOs, and national governments in the design and implementation and evaluation of programs to treat the most life-threatening forms of malnutrition. He's worked in some of the largest emergency programs of the last decade, the crisis in Darfur, the aftermath of the Asian tsunami, and the nutrition crisis in South Sudan, Nigeria, and Afghanistan. Please help us welcome Saul Guerrero.
Hello. So they asked me to speak very loudly to make sure that the people at the back could hear me. I think they forgot that I'm Venezuelan, so loud is our default mode. So if this starts to get really loud, then let me know. My name is Saul Guerrero, and as I've just been introduced, I am the Director of International Nutrition at Action Against Hunger. And today, what I would like to talk to you a little bit about is what happens when an organization realizes that the main core business, the main core objective of your business is humongous. And when you might realize that you can't possibly pull it off. If there is one reason to innovate, it's so that you don't die and become irrelevant. And I think what I would like to do today is to tell you a little bit about what that journey for us, that journey of realization has been like, and what we have taken out of it, and how we have changed as a result. The problem. Hunger is one of those things that goes way back. I am pretty damn sure that one of the primary reasons why we got out of the caves was because we were hungry, or we didn't want to be hungry, or we were terrified of being hungry and starving. Everywhere you look, hunger has been part of history. In the pyramids, I think it's the one in the middle, there's a hieroglyphic of hunger. It exists. There's an ancient Egyptian symbol for the concept of hunger, and it has been engraved in one of those pyramids. It is one of those things that just has been part of who we have been and who we have become. And it has been part of our history, our art, our philosophy. A lot of it has centered around that constant and historic struggle between humans and hunger. It has also driven, however, some of our most impressive innovations. Much of what we do today in agriculture and industry can be traced back to that desire to make the most possible out of the land that you have so that you don't experience hunger whatsoever. And one could argue that we have taken that to some pretty insane levels. But this is the reality. Hunger and our relationship with food and eating has become an integral part of how we think about ourselves and how we think about society. So much so that I think that we have come to think of hunger and the fear of starvation as something that is intrinsic to humanity itself. And what I mean by that is that I think we have come to a point where we think it's okay to build castles and build cities and send reusable rockets into space at the same time as some of our people are starving. We sort of come to accept that progress can happen, and there will always be some who will starve and some who might starve to death. But what I want to get across to you first and foremost today is that this is not an intrinsic part of humanity, or it doesn't have to be. In the last 25 years, the number of children who starve to death every year has been cut by half. So if there's one piece of news that you need to remember, is that things, in the big scheme of things, are actually getting better. Now, it is part of my job to pretend otherwise, because I need to, try to rally some support behind this cause, but actually the numbers don't really lie. Things are, on the whole, getting better. If you are a mother today or a father today in any of the 75 countries where severe starvation happens, the chances of you finding a health facility near you who can provide you with treatment for the most lethal forms of malnutrition the chances are higher than they have ever been ever before. You don't have to watch your children become malnourished and starve to death. For the large majority of people, this is, however, not the majority of people, for a great deal of people, this is still a reality, though. If you have been paying any attention to the news beyond Comey and everything that is happening in this wonderful country that has been hosting me for the past 6 months, I should just get it out of my system and say I arrived here 72 hours before Trump was elected. It has been quite a journey into American life. But if you have been paying attention to anything other than what is happening in here, you will have heard Nigeria, Yemen, South Sudan, Somalia. According to the UN, there's 20 million people this year, right now, at the risk of starvation. This is a reality. And for between 1 and 2 million children every year, this is a reality that will cost them their lives. Now, is it because of the famines? The truth is that it isn't. On any given year, yes, over the last 25 years or the last 15 years, we have seen a dramatic reduction in the number of children who experience this most lethal form of starvation. But during that same period, the number of children who are receiving treatment has increased, but not anywhere near at the scale at which we need it. And it is in that gap, in between that red line and that green line, where the majority of those deaths come from children who are starving but who can't quite get to treatment. Now, I happen to work for Action Against Hunger, and for the past 38 years, it's been our business to prevent children from starving to death. This is what we do. I mean, it's so intrinsic to who we are that it's in our name. I mean, there's no escaping it. Hunger and the prevention of starvation is our business. Now, every year, as my very kind intro said, we implement programs in over 50 countries and reach hundreds of thousands of children with this kind of treatment. And, and it's a huge part of the reason why I joined Action Against Hunger. We're one of those organizations that isn't just doing an awful lot of stuff, we're actually trying to constantly improve what we do. And it's a bunch of nerds, myself included, who, get really into the science of stuff. So we have been behind some of the most interesting medical, programmatic, and policy innovations in this field for the last 35 years. From the peanut butter-looking paste that has been carefully designed to treat the most extreme form of malnutrition. And within 10 weeks, you can rehabilitate a child that is starving to death to being fully healthy with these kind of products. And we were the first organization that ever used that in the field. Or the little band that you put around the arm so that any mother, illiterate, can diagnose malnutrition, and it doesn't require a health provider to do it. It's a band that costs 5 cents to make. It is the cheapest thing to diagnose malnutrition, and we are rolling it out across the world right now. But last year, we sat down, and we did some number crunching, and we sort of asked ourselves, okay, so if everything adds up, are we going to be able to make a dent on the problem? And we came to the conclusion that we weren't going to be able to. Good intentions are not good enough, and nowhere is that more acutely felt, I think, than in the fight against hunger. Everybody in this room will agree that if you had a choice, or if you had the power to prevent every child from being hungry, you would. But that isn't going to cut it. And that was a realization that even for an organization that reaches 14 million people every year, all our combined efforts in those 50 countries weren't going to make a significant dent on the problem. And make no mistake, if that is your core mission and your core purpose, the realization that you might not succeed is terrifying. We were left, I think, with 3 basic choices about how to deal with that reality. The first is just to ignore it. You laugh, but actually, you would be surprised, I would argue, about the number of organizations that know deep inside that what they're selling people, their fight that they're selling people, and the work that they're doing and their contribution towards it isn't really going to add up to meaningful change, and you persevere because it's just the only way to keep the lights on in the business. It becomes a self-fulfilling thing. You're in the business of being in business. And you ignore whether you're making any difference whatsoever. That was one choice. We could just keep on going. We could just close shop and say, this isn't going to cut it. We're not going to make any difference. Let's find a cause that we can make a meaningful difference in and take that on instead. Of course, if your name has hunger in it, kind of hard to move away from it. But that's a choice. And the third choice was to rethink everything. Not just how you do things or why you're doing things or where you do things, everything. To go back to a drawing board all together as an organization and say, if we know that this is the case and everything is stacked against us succeeding, what the hell do you do? I won't bore you with the details of what that process was like to rethink everything, but I'll tell you where we landed. First, if I tell you, do you want to end hunger, you will say yes. But if I tell you I will double or we will double the number of children that receive treatment every year by 2020, that sounds a lot more appealing because it's measurable. You know exactly what success looks like. I don't know if we will ever get to a point where we will be able to prevent hunger, but I sure as hell know that we can get to a point when on our watch, no child starves to death. That is doable, and that's our mission. Boom. Simple. By 2020, 6 million out of those 16 million. By 2030, 100%. Simple. By 2030, on our watch, no child will starve to death. Simple goal. Well, thank you. Thank you. Just to be clear, when I say our watch, it means our watch. So clap to yourselves too, because you're in it. Second thing, massive thing, cease all competition. As an organization that has considered itself a pioneer and a groundbreaker in a number of areas, this has been one of the hardest ones. Because you want to always find support for your idea over somebody else's idea. Stop. This battle gets won if every idea and the best ideas float to the surface and we support a good idea whether it's ours or not. And third, infiltrate the big players that make a difference in achieving this goal. We might not be able to do it as an NGO, but we know who can. So we set up this little infiltration plan in motion, and before we knew it, we had a movement of people in this business who meant business and who adopted this goal and this resolution as their own. Before we knew it, we had UNICEF adopting this as their goal, the UK government adopting this as their goal, the European Commission adopting this as their goal, and one of the largest philanthropic groups in the UK making this their mission by 2020. It wasn't just us. People just needed something. It hasn't been easy. And I think it hasn't been easy primarily because we have had to stop obsessing about money. In this kind of atmosphere today, if you're in the civil society, in the non-governmental sector, you're terrified of not having enough money to pay the bills. I tell you what, I think if you follow your heart and you know you're doing the right thing, money will follow. Nothing is less exciting than somebody who ultimately just wants your money. Sell them a vision, sell them a plan, and money will follow. Stop obsessing about brand recognition and attribution. Who gives a damn if I did it or you did it? Who gives a damn? That kid won't care. In 2030, if we succeed, who cares? If it was me, you, or you? Nobody cares. So just stop worrying about, is my logo on the slide? Yes, it is. But that doesn't really matter. In the big scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. And for organizations like ours and many of the others involved who fight multiple fights in different fronts, not just malnutrition, you need to stop thinking of, well, if I do this, does that distract me from doing that? Yeah, it will. But such is life. You have to pick your battles and you have to be absolutely damn sure that you win the ones you pick. It has forced us to be brave and to be bold and to show the courage of our conviction. It's very easy to say it, but are you going to put your business behind it? That's I think, the choice that we were forced to make in following this through. And it has forced us to really believe that if we succeed, more success will follow. And that recognition and funding and support will come not because we are very good at chasing it, but because we have goddamn earned it. So what's it worth it? I don't know. Invite me in 2020. And I'll come and tell you if we pulled it off. I don't know if we will succeed, but if you're going to do something in life, go at it all in. So was it worth it? I don't know, but it forced us to change and to get serious about the fights that we fight and to make compromises along the way and adapt. And if for that reason alone, the process of recognizing the immensity of the task ahead and the changes that it forced us to make and the soul searching that we had to make, I think made us a better organization. It made us a better movement. And I think in the whole will prove to be the right thing to have done at this point in time. Thank you very much.